You're listening to a podcast appearing on the Two Guys Talking podcast network.
Welcome to the Green Gab Podcast, a place to gab with people rocking it in green. Green homes, green living, green companies. Join Marla Close, the green home coach and author of Living Green Effortlessly, Simple Choices to a Better Home, and Tony Pratt, the Director of Builder Relations at The Sound Room. Here are your hosts, Marla and Tony.
Good day. I'm Marla Close, the Green Home Coach, and you are listening to The Green Gab, and we are in studio recording today. We really appreciate our listeners hanging in there with us, and we've had so much to share via the podcast and just really so elated at the quality and the guests we're getting and the topics that we've been able to talk about. And we just had a great run doing the home and garden show. And
you know what gets me is, what are we up to, like 70 episodes? I know they're not all out on iTunes yet, but
yeah,
I think we're like at 70 or
over
so.
70.
That's
over
just
70.
crazy.
Yeah. If you told me 2 years ago that we would have been doing this, I would have just laughed you out of the room.
I would have left our Tuesday meetings at Panera and said, excuse me?
There's lots to talk about, so we just keep going at it.
And it seems like, because we were both down at International Builder Show, and there's just more and more and more focus on improving technologies in construction, sustainability in construction. It's almost like it's just being baked into the cake to begin with.
Which is the way it should be, because green, sustainability, efficiencies, all of that, I mean, they're not something that you think of separately. There's something that, yeah, you're right, just baked in the cake. I read a great article yesterday by Suzanne Shelton, who we've had on the podcast with the Shelton Group, and it was all about how companies could essentially take a stand around sustainability and how they actually needed to really do it and share it from their hearts, not just, we're going to improve this by 50% kind of a deal. But it was really a great article with great insights. And one of the things that was mentioned in the article is that, especially with millennials and the younger generation, millennials, I'm sorry we keep picking on you, but this is a good picking on you. Millennials are bringing so much care to their work and so much integration between their work life, their beliefs, and their values that they're really starting to impact the market with how they buy that way. And that's a big factor for how millennials buy, is they'll look for sustainability baked in. So it was really interesting to read this article and to hear how companies can take this approach. And really, it's by taking a stand and then actually doing it.
Well, you know, that's interesting because end of January at the St. Louis HBA, we had a program, Breakfast with the Builders.
Yeah.
And if you remember, probably about a decade, they did something like that with dinner, where you'd have a bunch of different vendors and trade partners at the table, and you'd have a couple builders that would go table by table. Well, to a person, I heard the same thing coming out of a lot of production builders, and that was, we need to bring in more high-end look or a more value for the dollar.
Value.
And what's happening is we're facing in this market increased cost of land and development, a lot of it because of regulation, increased cost of labor because of scarcity, and just a normal increase in materials. So as costs are going up, you know, really the builder has to justify that increased cost. They can't just blame it on the government or, oh, that's just new changes in codes or whatnot. But they have to sit there and say, yes, our prices are going up, but our finishes are going up or the look is going up. So that way there's a perceived value that the home buyer will receive.
So that the quality and the integrity of the entire project or home is going up.
Exactly.
Okay, so perfect segue into what we want to talk about today. Inside of the National Green Building Standard, which we'll come back to in a second, there's all these practices. And one of the very earliest practices in the beginning, matter of fact, it's 502. Chapter 5 is the first chapter we start with. I know it's weird that it starts there, but it does. 502, second practice, is project, team, mission statement, and goals. So right up front in the green certification program, we say, hey, you need to pull this team together and let us know who it is and what you intend to do.
Interesting.
That lays the groundwork for a value, an integrity, and a quality that can go through the entire project. Because so much of green building is all about doing what you say you're going to do and doing it.
Well, it's basically calling out you need project management.
Yes.
You have to have project management.
Exactly. Different chapters of practices that are to be accomplished. And each of those chapters focuses on a different category of practices, right? You've got land and lot and site as your first area. Then you've got resource efficiency, water efficiency and conservation, energy efficiency and conservation. You have indoor air quality and indoor environmental quality, which is the kind of how good the house feels or the building.
Right.
And then you have homeowner or building owner, education and documentation. So those 6 segments, 5 of them are physical attributes. And then we've got this last one that we kind of wrap the bow around with the education and documentation piece. But practices and processes and products in those 6 categories are what make a house eligible for green certification.
Absolutely. And the cool thing about this program is it's a holistic approach.
Absolutely.
It's not a one part of the house. It is the entire systemic approach to building the house and teaching the homeowner how to properly operate the house.
Right. So life cycle. So where does that life cycle begin? At the beginning. And what's at the beginning? The project. The project team, planning, mission statement, the goals. And this is what's so cool about this, and I think it's in most green certification programs that I'm familiar with, is this stuff matters.
Absolutely.
The people part, the value, the relationships matter. And it matters so much that one of the practices in the National Green Building Standards, practice 502, if anybody wants to check me on it, and it is project team, mission statement, and goals. So right there in black and white, we lay it out. Hey, you got to have your act together. You've got to have your team together. And in addition to just meeting that criteria, there's all kinds of opportunity to use that as a way to propel this project with a lot of value for not only the builder and the homeowner, but for all the parties that are involved.
You know, it's interesting because basically, very few people look at building a home as a true project.
True.
Where it needs to be project managed.
True.
And by using that first part of the green building standard of saying you have to have this team assembled, it's telling you, you have to have project management in place to build this house. You know, let's look at, the first couple stages of true project management. Initiation. You're initiating the whole project. Right. So you're starting to plan it.
Right.
Then planning. You're planning out everything. Then you get to executing. So if you don't have your team put together, how can you plan properly? And if you can't plan
Cart before
properly,
the horse.
how can you execute?
Right.
Correct? And that ties into your team building and goal setting and mission statement.
And we had, a few of us were talking about this the other day. Commercial construction, a lot of folks go to school for construction management, but it's really focused on commercial. And there were a handful of us sitting around talking at some Homebuilder Association meeting, and we're like, why is that so dropped off the radar in the home building industry? I think a lot of folks think because they're smaller,
absolutely,
they don't need formal construction management practices, which is a lot of project management. But there's so much of that. And one of the things I love about being in the quote-unquote green world is that it's all about quality. It's all about upping your game. It's all about upping your integrity and standing by what you say you're going to do. And that starts with your team.
Absolutely. And that's a great point, because if you think construction, most people want to think about the skyscrapers, the multi-million-dollar projects that's where you really need to have the educational background and the formal training. Oh, you're just going to build a $100,000 house? Oh, anybody can do that, right?
But it's just as complicated.
Exactly. Because even though it's a smaller scale and it's a smaller budget, you still have the same amount of parts you have to put in. You have the same amount of systems.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work together, the project itself is going to fail.
You remember when we interviewed Bob Fincher with Proud Green Home, and we asked him, we said, why is it so challenging for builders to adopt new strategies and new ways of thinking? And what he said was really eye-opening, because he said, a builder has so many variables. They're building on unpredictable pieces of land with unpredictable labor pools many times, and all these variables that are not necessarily the same from house to house. So whenever they can keep something in a process and keep it the same, they will, just to mitigate the risk. And I was like, whoa, I had not thought of it that way, which is altogether even more case for projects, teams, management. And I can't believe it, but let's pause there. And then when we come back at the next segment, folks, we're going to really dive into what this means for you as a potential homeowner or home buyer, for you as a builder or remodeler, and if you want a green certified home.
Sounds good.
Okay, we'll be right back.
Check out the book, Living Green Effortlessly, Simple Choices for a Better Home, to make simple changes to buying habits that affect a home both inside and out. Marla Esser-Close shows consumers ways to make any home a green home. Get the book now at livinggreenbook.com. That's livinggreenbook.com.
Wouldn't it be cool if your advertising could last forever? It can with perpetual advertising. Here's how it works. Unlike TV or radio ads, where every instance the ads are broadcast, they're only played once and lost forever. Perpetual advertising can have repeat exposure and replayability weeks, months, and even years after they're inserted in a podcast. So even if a podcast is a few years old, your ads will still be impactful to repeat listeners, as well as new listeners. This gives your advertising dollar the most bang for the buck. Find out more about perpetual advertising at twoguystalking.com/sponsors.
Hi, I'm David Knoll from Walter Knoll Florist. You're listening to The Green Gab.
Back gabbing about projects, teams, missions, goals, all this lofty sounding stuff.
Team dynamics, goal setting, mission statements. These are really the things you don't think about too often when it comes time to build a house.
Right. And it's critical. Well, it's actually critical for any house or building or project for that matter. But in green certified building, it's even more critical.
Well, it's almost mandated.
It is. Matter of fact, I believe it's a mandatory practice.
If you want it certified, yes.
Yes. So this says, you have to own up to this at the beginning in order to have this. And the project team piece can be as easy as documenting all the players on the team. But one of the things I've learned, and I think you'll acknowledge this as well, is that simply by acknowledging who or what something is, it puts it into reality, right? Gets it
absolutely.
out there. So it says, okay, here's my team. And you've just called us a team, and we've put all the players on the board by listing them. So it actually gives us a really good starting point.
But the question always is it a team on paper or a functioning team?
And that's where I think can be the make or break difference in a project. And I think we both have examples of both ways.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've had the projects where, you're going to do this, and you don't interface with anybody.
Yeah.
You're just supposed to figure out your little part, show up when you need to show up, and go from there.
Kind of the toss it over the tennis net approach.
Right.
Here you catch.
Or it becomes, all right, you're the central part of this house. You have to make it work. You have to interface with this contractor and this contractor and this contractor and this contractor and this contractor. You have to run that all.
So how common is it in a house? Mm-hmm. In my homeowner manual life, we experience over 75 discrete items that typically come into a home. Systems, appliances, finishes.
That sounds about right.
So, but we got contractors for all those things,
yes.
right? So a lot of times, the builder is kind of the central point that goes out to each of those contractors, and the contractor in turn relates and communicates back to the builder. How many times do the contractors get a chance to communicate amongst themselves with each other?
Very little, except on a job site itself.
If this project team is identified early, and these people are maybe actually in a project planning meeting or a charrette, as we oftentimes call them in the green and sustainability world. My air quotes are going up, folks. Might those contractors, those teammates, have an opportunity to see where potential pitfalls might be up front?
They could, but typically you rarely see that. What I have found is usually you might do a walkthrough, and everybody's expected to have their little piece of the puzzle ready to go. And if there's issues, they come up during the walkthrough and the superintendent has to address them there.
Which is better than
it is
the
better
many
than,
projects have.
hey, I'm installing this and
Right.
that beam's got to move.
Right.
What do you mean the beam's got to move?
Or I have to
it's in the
drill
wrong
through
spot.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Code says I can't do this. You want me to do this. It's got to move. And
Or you've got an electrical run that's going through a duct and nobody catches it until they're actually installing.
yes. There's a lot of little things. And then you have the part where an inspector shows up and he wants something that might not necessarily be in code, but he still wants it.
Right.
You just never know what you're going to deal with. If you can sit there and plan and at least have the relationship with all of those different contractors, then you understand, well, yes, we're going to need this from the framers. Well, why? Because of this, and this. Oh, okay, now there's a little bit more understanding. This is
Because
a different
those
type of
tasks
house.
are relying on framing.
It all builds on each other. And
Yeah.
when you have a proactive builder who is building that high performance house, he's expecting his members to have these discussions. And if the HVAC person is telling the framing contractor, you can't do this as you normally do, and here's why, the builder expects the framing contractor to say, oh, okay, not no.
Correct. So 2 thoughts come to mind with that. Number 1, I don't believe the homeowner or the home buyer is oftentimes a member of that team. And as the primary stakeholder, that's definitely consideration. And part of it depends on how you're building, right?
It depends.
Right, because if you're building a custom home or if you're building a home, even a production builder building a home specifically for someone, they come in at ground level, different relationship than if you're building a spec home.
Yes.
Totally got it. And people spec homes, if you don't know what that is a home that's already built and ready to go when you go in to buy it. So actually,
even a production home with a homeowner versus a custom home with a homeowner, those are two different processes.
But here's what's been interesting about that. So actually, my husband Scott is sitting in the studio with us today, but he and I bought a spec home, and we actually did a lot of research on the builder and the areas where we wanted to be and everything. But we needed to move fairly quick, so we needed a home that was ready to go. So when they came back in to do our warranty walkthrough, one of the things I had noticed is that my chandelier in my dining room does not line up with the center of my windows.
Oh, yeah.
So I can't line up my table with the chandelier and the windows, and I have terrible OCD or great OCD, depending on your frame of mind. It bugs the crap out of me.
Right.
So I asked on the warranty, I said, hey, what can we do to move that chandelier? And he looks at me and goes, nothing. I said, what do you mean nothing? There's a beam there.
Yeah.
It's like, you guys don't think of this when you are drawing up the plans for the house?
Nope.
No.
They do not.
And the reason is because the framing and the electrical don't talk to each other.
They do not.
So they're just laying it out there. And I mean, it's a beautiful home, and they've done a ton of high-end, nice finishes and crown molding and stuff like this. But then something as basic as aligning my lights, I can't get.
I can always tell while I'm in the basement looking up at the floor joists what side of the house the framers started laying the joists on. Because inevitably, you'll have 16 inches from one side of the house, nice and uniform, until the end.
Oh,
and I've seen
making it
one
up.
too many, that little makeup. And I've seen one too many times where there's a truss that blocks either a tech tube coming down from the attic or the run for the wires, or you name it. You just have no access to punch out of the house.
Well, and this is even a better case for designing a house to be built with the standard sizes of materials, for instance, sheathing, sheets of OSB or plywood or whatever kind of wood you're using on the outside of the house, or many other products are available. But if you design the house to meet the sizes, you're not doing as many cuts, you're not doing as much kind of working it in and making it fit.
Absolutely.
But we don't operate that way. So part of what happens with this whole concept of project management is that it can force us to rethink the whole way we do business to be more efficient and more effective by drawing in everybody's positions and limitations and considerations at the beginning of the project rather than as we're working through it.
The one thing I've learned is the trade who preceded you has no idea the effect that his work
or hers
absolutely, has done to the next trade. They have no clue.
It's the rolling down the hill kind of a deal. You know, you're bouncing here, then you're bouncing there, and then you're bouncing there, but you don't know.
I did my stuff. My stuff's good. Oh, yeah, great. But you just screwed up everything for the next 3 contractors, and you have no idea why.
Yeah. And so this whole concept of project team, yes, we require for the green certification a project team to be identified, but there is a tremendous opportunity by setting that mission statement for what you're going to achieve with this house or this building, and those goals. There's a tremendous opportunity for that team to take it to a whole new level.
Oh, absolutely. You know, part of what green building preaches is efficiency.
Right.
Not just resource efficiency.
Well, we are a resource.
We are a resource as well.
Yeah,
exactly.
Totally.
So if everybody is on the same page and they understand that the consequences of their action affects another team member, then chances are they're going to think about every action that they take.
I've actually been working on a project that's had some team issues, and it's been challenging because it's really affecting the outcome of the project. It affects, you know, the financial end of the project. It affects the timing of the project, and it's been a tough go. And I have to commend the rest of the team that's really picked up and gotten it done, and just put their big boy pants on and their big girl pants on and just, you know, gotten it done. But that team, you know, one part of that team not functioning really does have a huge impact.
Yeah, they call that loafing.
I didn't say it.
No, that's the actual academic term for it.
Okay, there you go. I didn't know there was an academic term for it. So
yes,
who knew?
Class right now that I'm taking.
Who knew?
We're talking about team building.
Well, there you go. Well, hey, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we will close out today's episode with some more thoughts on how this all matters.
Don't miss the next episode of the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. podcast. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. isn't just a television show now on ABC. It's a great new podcast available at agentsofshield.tv, only on the Two Guys Talking podcast network.
You can try and learn about voiceover all by yourself, or you can get you and your voice to school. Check out Voice Farmers Voiceover Academy today and learn how you can make money with your voice. It's all available over at voicefarmers.com. That's voicefarmers.com.
I'm Chief Chris DiGiuseppe from WhatCopsWatch.com, and you're listening to the Green Gab podcast with Marla Esser-Close.
Hey, we're still gabbing about project team and mission statement and goals, and there's oh my gosh, this sounds like bleh, but there's so much wrapped up in this.
Oh, well, this isn't just for a home.
No, it's for everything.
You can take these basics and put it to any project you can think of.
Right.
Whether it's an IT implementation at an office, whether it's, you know, new equipment being installed in a doctor's office. It doesn't matter what the project is. You can use these same theories.
So when we were offline, Scott brought up a really great point. He said, you know, really your mission statement and your end product is what the finished home should be.
It is.
And then working backwards to see how all of the pieces and the trades and the products and everything that goes into the house, how it kind of unravels. And that is such an important part, is that mission statement. That's exactly what that mission statement is. What is the end product that you are working to achieve?
Well, and I think that's where some of the challenges come into place, because if you're looking at the end product, and
start with the end in mind.
You start with the end in mind,
yeah.
though, you still can only get about 95% there, because unless you know exactly how the homeowner wants that home to operate and how they plan on using it and living in it,
good point.
You can't be 100% at the end.
Oh, now we're back to Dream Green Home Project.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And a lot of that, especially in my world, in the technology world, in the home, you want to talk about such a range. We have some people that just don't want any technology in a house and people that want everything in the house. So you just don't know, and that really scares the builder, especially in a custom home. He doesn't know what the final end product is going to be. He might be able to vision the outside and the exterior, but that interior, it could go so many different ways.
And that's where that interview with the home buyers / homeowner to be is so important. What do you want that house to feel like? How do you want it to function? And that is your end goal, right? Is not just a 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, but what else?
But not only that, that's where, you talked about, does the homeowner feel like they're part of the team?
Right.
That's where they are, because now you're getting that feedback from the homeowner and they're saying, this is what I want. Yes, homeowner, I need you to go to the cabinetry people. I need you to go to talk to the painter. I need you to go talk to the lighting people. I need you to go talk to the technology integrator. I need you to communicate with every one of these people so I can be 100% knowing what your house is going to be long before I finish it.
Well, and you and I both have worked with builders of both varieties.
Yes.
And my belief is that some of the builders that I've probably had the best experiences with are also the builders that have amazing testimonials on their website.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because they are part of the team and sometimes part of the family. And you hear that with remodelers in particular. They become part of the family because they're in the home during the project. But this whole idea of team and bringing in the stakeholders, I mean, the person that's going to live there is a big stakeholder.
And that's part of when it's putting all of that together. In reality, depending on the type of project, the homeowner should almost have a little veto power.
Okay,
because
fair enough.
If they are the one paying the bill, they should have final say of, no, this is what I want, not that.
Oh, I agree.
And a lot of people don't realize that.
But I think in potential homeowners, we're kind of going to talk to you here for a moment. Stand your ground. Say what you want and go through, the thinking process of what you want your home to feel like, what you want it to be. Is it going to be hub central for a bunch of teenage kids because you want them all to come to your house and you want to be able to have that kind of an environment? Is it going to be peace and tranquility or different parts of the house for different pieces? And then communicate that with your builder so that you are a part of the team and they being the team that's working with you to build your home, they understand what your priorities are. That's the importance of this whole idea of a mission statement and goals is to get that kind of information, not just that you want it to be a high energy efficient home or not that you just want it to have super great indoor air quality, but why? What is the why behind that? Because that's what makes that mission statement stand apart.
This is really where the homeowner has to establish the goals for their house.
Yes. The builder has to translate that into what does that actually mean in terms of features and functionality and products that I bring into this house.
Now, have you heard of SMART criteria when it comes to setting goals?
How have I missed that?
All right. This is a fun one.
Okay.
This is straight out of classwork I've been doing.
I love it that you're in class working on this stuff as we go.
Well, it just all works out at the same time, right? Okay, so SMART criteria. So if I'm setting goals, I look for 5 things. I look for specific. I want to make my goal as specific as possible. Measurable. We need to be able to measure it. So if I'm saying I need this house built in 6 months,
okay,
that's my goal. That's specific. I need a house built. Mm-hmm. It's got to be measurable. I need it in 6 months.
Okay.
So at least you can start the criteria for the builder, right? It has to be attainable. Yes, I can build that house in 6 months. No, I can't build that house in 2 months. All right?
Got it.
It has to be relevant. So if I want my house to function this way, and this way, that has to be a relevant goal for that house. It can't be, I want to have a landing strip for my plane in my backyard.
On my 1/4 acre lot.
Exactly. That's not relevant.
Gotcha. And
then the last part of it is it's time limited. So we are sensitive to everything. These goals can't just go on forever.
Right.
They're time limited. So they call it whenever you're trying to set goals, and this goes for anything, not just building a home, but anything you can think of that you want to set a goal for, if you don't use those 5 criteria, you will always fail.
Well, I wrote them down because I'm setting goals in Green Home Coach right now. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go back through all my goals and make sure they have all 5 SMART criteria.
You can Google it.
Okay,
or
sweet.
You can buy a couple $100 worth of textbooks and they can tell you the same thing.
Well, and when we put the resources up for the show notes, we'll put a link to a page that you can give us for SMART criteria. And we'll also put links out there for some of the other podcasts that we've mentioned during today's podcast too. So that way, if you guys want to hear some of the other topics that we mentioned today, you can go segue in.
Yeah, but when we were talking, pre-recording about some of the things we wanted to talk about, once you said goal setting, I'm like, oh, I got the one we need to talk about.
So you're currently in a project management curriculum, right?
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
So give us one big takeaway that has really struck you from your project management class. And I know you're implementing a lot of this in your business life, right? Just in time kind of information.
I mean, literally the first week I started, I was changing things at work.
That's so
whether
awesome.
it was process or whatever.
That's so awesome.
The thing about project management is you just have to remember there are 5 basic phases of project management.
Okay.
You got initiation, where you initiate the project, or initialization. You have planning, you have executing, and you have the 2 stages that everybody seems to forget about, controlling and monitoring, and closing. Now, the one thing I have learned, if you look at like a zero-sum game when it comes to time, the more time you spend planning, the less time you spend executing.
Yep.
Those 2 work in conjunction with each other. Don't plan much. It takes forever to execute.
Yep.
Plan a lot, things tend to go smoothly.
Plan the work the plan.
Exactly.
Yep.
And that is one thing that has been really hammered home.
So that's a perfect fit for green home building, because exactly what we ask you to do, you being the builder, the homeowner, that team, when you are designing and applying for green home certification, we ask you to submit what all your practices are going to be, your plan.
Yep.
And then we come back and we inspect at 2 different phases to see that you're actually executing your plan.
That you're controlling and you're monitoring.
Right. So anybody that does green home certification is actually getting another level of quality check in their homes. Mm-hmm. This is why these homes sell for more. This is why these homes sell faster. It's because they actually do what they say they will do.
It's why they maintain their value, too.
I know. I can't find a downside about them except, what everybody doesn't know.
Right.
That is such a wonderful solution.
And let's face it, that final phase, that was built for you, closing. That's your homeowner education. That is teaching and instructing the homeowners how to live in this house, how to operate this house, how to get maximum efficiency and enjoyment out of this house.
Well, and that's, do you want a house to own you, or do you want to own your house?
I think it'd be the latter.
Yeah. And that's what it comes down to. So understanding how to take care of your home, building that home so that it will support your lifestyle versus the other way around. I mean, so many of us are getting to that way of thinking in our businesses, in our homes, in our lives, that, we have some control and we can draw some boundaries. And
yes,
it can happen with your home, and it all starts at the beginning.
The plan.
With the plan. Hey, Tony, this has been an amazing conversation today. We always have fun in here.
And I'm sure we'll expand on this one in a future podcast, too.
Yeah, this is just a great topic, and it's something I'm hearing a lot about as 2018 has been rolling up its sleeves and getting going, and
I think you'll see more of this. You'll see more of this in the construction industry simply because we have fewer and fewer people working in the industry.
True.
So we have to start planning this out. We can't run the industry the way we did in the 70s and 80s.
No, I got to do it better.
Just because we don't have the manpower like we used to.
Oh boy, there's a whole nother topic we could do on man and woman power, the power of our labor force. But we'll leave that for another podcast. Hey, listeners, we so thank you for being here. Please, if you're listening to us on iTunes, leave us a review. Your reviews really make a huge difference for us and for just helping to get the podcast out to more people, because the more people that review, the more it shows up for other folks. So really appreciate you taking the time. You can find more information online at greengabpodcast.com with links to all the show notes and all kinds of information up there. So we just encourage you to go check it out on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast, as well as the Green Gab Podcast website, greengabpodcast.com. Hey, y'all have an amazing day, and we will catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Green Gab Podcast, and for joining us on our own personal Green Odyssey as we change the world one Green Gab podcast at a time. What did you learn about during this episode? Tell us now by visiting our website at greengabpodcast.com. And remember to connect with us via iTunes, Facebook, and Twitter. Links to do all of this are at our website, greengabpodcast.com. Thanks for listening, but more importantly, thanks for rocking it in green.